So, welcome to another Inspiration of Heroes stream. And just to give sort of the intro, what I do, what this stream is for those who are new to it or those who stumble upon it later. I started this series because my channel's always been about the inspiration that heroes can give us. What can heroes do for us? Any fictional hero, but I talk a lot about superheroes, obviously. But I've talked about how we will mythologize um, even real people, to the extent that I looked at the comic books of Van Halen. I'm getting run ready for Aerosmith soon and stuff like that. But we do mythologize things in our culture. We need our myths, and I look at how our heroes affect us personally from a psychological perspective, and communally as a society, as our culture. The problem, though, is that all you ever get is my own perspective, and the heroes that are important to me or whatever, because it's my channel. So I thought one cool way to prove what I'm saying and in terms of the function of these heroes is to bring some people onto the channel as guests. I'm pretty picky and pretty jealous with my channel, so I don't just bring anybody and everybody on. But I've got a list of people that would love to be on, and of course, everybody wants to be on. Any geek, you tell them, hey, there's an opportunity for you to sit in the spotlight and talk about your heroes to an audience. Everybody wants to do that, right? So I know everybody wants to be on, but we'll get there. I've got a list that we're working through. But tonight I have with me a guest I've been meaning to have on for a while, just never could get the schedule to match up. And that is Mr. Birdman, Daniel Heron himself from the chat there. But you probably know him as Birdman over on his own channel, Soundtracks with Birdman. He does a great stream every Wednesday night. He and Aged Boomer, who was also on the Inspiration of Heroes stream, in fact, our very last guest, they do a great rewatch in which they talk about the film, but they concentrate primarily, for Daniel's sake anyway, on the soundtracks and whatnot, because he's a huge soundtrack and symphony and music aficionado in general. So that's always great to hear. I've been a guest over that a couple times. But I asked him, he's one of us. He's a geek just like us, and he's got heroes of his own. So we're going to go ahead and invite him on the stream now. Welcome, Mr. Birdman yourself. Hello.
Hi, is this working?
It is. Let me see.
Thank you, Lord.
Yep, you're good.
Okay.
How are you?
I've spent 3 hours with Verizon trying to figure out why my phone doesn't work. And
oh, no.
I think I've concluded tomorrow I'm going into AT&T and becoming a new customer of AT&T.
Yeah, wherever you live too, you just got to get with us what has the best coverage and stuff as well.
Well, that would be Verizon, but everyone I talk to tells me something different, and it shouldn't take 3.5 hours and 6 days to fix the problem.
Yeah, I hear you. That your video is a little 1999, but your sound is coming in just fine, so that's the important thing.
You mean like my decor's 1999 or?
No, the quality of the video. It's a little pixelated and stuff, but you're good. We can still see you.
I have to do a Wi-Fi hotspot thing through a tablet because the phone has no service at all. Gotcha. Well, my Wi-Fi is holding out so far. Sometimes the video gets a little clunky when I stream this early, and Wi-Fi tends to be split a bit in the house. But so far, so good. If I get to be clunky as well, I might just switch to the avatar. But anyway, we are here to talk about you and talk about your heroes. Now, you gave me a long list of heroes, and I put some of the. Well, you gave me a handful. I asked you for them, and I put some of the best known ones up there on the thumbnail. Excuse me. And but you did say that there maybe before we get to those, you said that the one that was kind of closest to your heart was a character from the movie Empire of the Sun. Now, I've never seen this movie, so if you wanted to start with that, okay. That's like getting like really personal. I don't know if it's too personal for YouTube, but hey, what the hell, right? It's a semi-autobiographical novel by J.G. Ballard. He was a British kid in China in World War II. And the Japanese came in and took over Shanghai, and he spent the war in an internment camp, which was not a good life to be in any sort of Japanese camp. But in the film, it's played by a young Batman, Christian Bale, his first film role. He's like 12 years old. And he's separated from his parents. He was a very privileged child, which I was not. I went to private school, but my mother worked for me to go to private school. He was very privileged, so he had hard time adjusting to camp life. And he starts the film out as an atheist, which I've never been an atheist. But like the tagline on the the movie poster says, to survive in the world at war, he must find a strength greater than the events that surround him. And it's very true, because he loves airplanes. He just loves all airplanes. And to him, he doesn't see British, American, Japanese, Chinese. He just sees people and airplanes. And he does have a pretty good spirit throughout the film. He tries to remain optimistic. But I really think it was his love of airplanes that got him through the war. And like for me, like I've had problems with depression my entire life. I think the first time I thought about suicide was maybe third grade. And for me, I've always had music. And I didn't grow up in a musical family. I can't play anything. I can't read notes. But I love music. And I was kind of like, okay, Jim had his airplanes. I've got my soundtracks. And no matter what happened, no matter how bad the day was at school, especially high school sucked. I could go home, pop in The Empire Strikes Back. I can watch the whole movie in my head. And then another thing, John Williams did the film score for Empire of the Sun. And I've always said it's the most personal film score for me. And like, if someone was to ask me like, well, like what's your theme, like your musical theme? I think most people would think the Raiders March, but no, it's not. There's a Toy Planes Home and Hearth is kind of like Jim's theme. It's like da 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 da. Starts out real slow, and then it grows, and the chorus comes in. And that's always been my theme. It's been Toy Planes Home and Hearth. There's a concert piece, Cadillac of the Skies, that the Boston Pops does on occasion. It's basically the same thing. They just kind of merge two things. But that's always been my theme. And like whenever there's just been like the worst day imaginable, like Kayla, my Malamute, I loved her to death. And I knew time was getting short. And I woke up and I thought, I think today's going to have to be the day. And I was sitting on my tub, putting on my boots, and she just kind of like walked up and put her head in my lap. And Toy Planes Home and Hearth just plays in my head. And that's my theme. And him surviving World War II. Yeah, he survived World War II in a Japanese internment camp. And he found faith in God at the end of the day, I believe. It's not directly stated in the film. And he grew a lot. And no matter what horrible things happened, there was always tomorrow. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to tell yourself there's always tomorrow. But there is.
That's a really interesting aspect that you chose a hero that we're talking about first who taught you how to draw inspiration from, well, in this case, your interests, but I mean, it's almost kind of like your heroes as well. You know, sometimes our heroes show us how to draw strength, not only necessarily from them, but from art, you know, in general, whether it's music, whether it's another hero story or whatever. And so it's interesting, even though his interest was planes or something like that, you know, you took that as a way, okay, how does he cope using his interest? Now I'll cope using my interest like that. That's pretty cool. You know, it's another aspect, another angle I don't think we've really talked about on one of these inspiration to hero streams yet.
Yeah, well, it's a good film. It's like 2 hours and 40 minutes. I think it's Steven Spielberg's second least favorite film next to 1941, which surprisingly, if I ever meet Steven Spielberg, I'm going to go like, hey, 1941, Empire of the Sun. Thank you. But,
well, now I'm going to kind of lead and do some transitions here, but if you want to talk about one more than the other, just let me know before I jump into it. But, you know, thinking about heroes who show you how to draw inspiration from whether it's other heroes or other art or whatever, you did have on the list there Spider-Man. And Spider-Man is specifically, you've got the 90s animated version of Spider-Man, which tends to be extremely popular. Spider-Man is so popular with so many people. And I think that he kind of embodies, you know, in general, most people, not everybody, I'm certainly an exception to this, but in general, most people tend to find it easier to relate to a cathartic motivational hero like Spider-Man, somebody who does mess up, who does, screw up now and then, has to pick himself up, dust himself off, and try harder or be better or whatever. And he does that, and he shows us how to do that. And those are wonderful characters, and they're really great to draw inspiration from. Spider-Man is one of the best characters of that classification, that cathartic motivational. And he, of course, a lot of people think, oh, I prefer heroes like that to heroes like Superman or Captain America. Well, the only reason Spider-Man works so well is because he's in the Marvel universe with other heroes to try to be like, that's the one thing, even though I love the Tobey Maguire films, that's the one thing that's missing from those films, is he doesn't have a Captain America or a Fantastic Four or somebody like that to try to aspire to be like, but he's got, they work around it, but, in terms of the 90s series, he absolutely did. I mean, they brought in other heroes and stuff like that. So what was your first introduction to, or how old were you in the 90s when you first saw that episode or series?
I was in my 20s in the 90s. Yeah.
Okay.
So college. Yeah.
Okay.
But so I grew up with Spider-Man. I knew who Spider-Man was, most of the Marvel characters. I'm not sure I really knew who Batman was, but I knew who Superman was.
Mm-hmm.
I like Spider-Man because, like you said, he's not rich.
Mm-hmm.
You got to work a job. You're trying to figure out, okay, can I pay the rent and the light bill on the same day? And he doesn't have a lot of luck with girls. I mean, he had Gwen Stacy and then she died, and then he had Mary Jane. But I remember when he got married to Mary Jane, I think I was in 6th grade. I think it was that summer.
Okay.
Maybe 7th grade that summer. It was the Amazing Spider-Man annual that year. And it's like, yeah, Spider-Man's growing up, and God, Marvel just killed all that, but that's another story. I was always able to relate to Spider-Man more than any other superhero, I think. Just because he felt real. Because I know my mother had trouble, like the car broke. I gotta get money to fix the car. School tuition's due. We gotta buy back to school clothes. Just working to survive, making sure everything can happen. And that was my most relatable aspect of Spider-Man. Because Fantastic Four, they had money. The Avengers had money. Dr. Doom's got his own country.
So does Black Panther.
So see, Spider-Man lives in a crappy apartment in New York City with no car,
he very much is the everyman in that respect.
Absolutely.
He is. What was it about the 90s series that brought down, or why did you want me to specifically choose an image from that one? I know you obviously like different incarnations of Spider-Man, but what is it about that one that
I thought they did a good job? We're talking about the one on Saturday mornings, right? On Fox. Yeah. I thought they did it. I didn't like what they did with the Hobgoblin, but I thought they did a good job bringing in other characters. It felt true to Spider-Man. I do not care for the Tom Holland movies. Because I don't want Iron Man Jr. I want Spider-Man.
I'm always careful when I talk about Spider-Man because it's not a hero that I grew up with outside of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which I loved. But
that was a cute show for the time.
So I tend to like things about Spider-Man that aren't necessarily like I liked the first Tom Holland movie anyway. But I like things about him, and then I realized, wait a minute, okay, this isn't a character that I personally connect with like others who are aficionados who really grew up with him. So maybe I'll just step back and let them call the shots here.
See, I'm the same way. When you start going off on Batman or Fan Man starts going off on Superman, I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to argue with you because I got no basis to argue with you.
Sure.
The way like you talk about Batman or Superman, that's kind of like how I feel about the Tom Holland movies. I'm like, this just really isn't Spider-Man.
But that 90s series was great. It had a wonderful voice cast. Ed Asner was there as well. Now I'm blanking on his name, but the producer, the guy who was behind the series.
Wasn't it RVR?
No, this was somebody else I'm talking about, and I can't remember his name. But he had a crowdfunding campaign for another series that he was doing. And one of the perks of the campaign was to release the script for what was supposed to wrap up that 90s series, because of course it ended on sort of a cliffhanger with Spidey with Madam Web trying to bring back Mary Jane or something like that. And he actually was going to release as a perk, and I guess he did. It's out there somewhere. I just haven't been able to hunt it down. But a script that had the original voice cast, I think, come back and record the audio anyway, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, as the wrap up of the series. That's pretty cool. That's out there somewhere. If people want to look it up, hunt it down. But yeah. So yeah, Spider-Man is a big one. So trying to map out some sort of progression here between your heroes, you've got well, Spider-Man's not quite so different. I mean, he does believe in trying to be like his heroes, but he also believes in something greater than himself, something there is a right thing to do, right? He's very family oriented with Aunt May, like you said, so he's got that kind of drive within him. What would you say Spider-Man had an interest? I mean, he's a photographer. He seems a little more like heroism sort of is his interest. Is that true to say? Or is that fair to say?
I would think so. He has
terms
a
of a
strong
hobby?
desire to help people. And I mean, he feels like it's just like his moral duty to help people because he can.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that. Like, because if I ever see a homeless person and don't give them money, I'm just like, could have given them something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
But you realize you can't give everybody something.
Sure.
It bothers me. It's like, why,
Yeah. It's sometimes I notice that people can sometimes when Spider-Man's in the hands of a poorer writer, he can fall prey to being a little self-involved. It's like, dude, stop your navel gazing and just deal with it. But when he's written correct the way he's supposed to be, it's not self-obsession, it's self-betterment. It's I'm really trying to put myself under the microscope to make sure I'm being the best hero, the best man, the best boyfriend, the best nephew, or whatever he can be, so it's a good character to learn from, certainly.
But see, he did grow because originally he wanted to join the Fantastic Four for money, and he found out there wasn't a paycheck involved.
Yeah.
And then he tried to join the Avengers for a paycheck, and then I think they just kind of got mutually mad with each other, and he's like, well, forget it. And he was wrestling when he first started out to make money. Yeah. But still, he was trying to help Aunt May, because Aunt May needs money. But he also wanted, a nice car and whatnot. But eventually he does get beyond that, and I think most of us are like that. We're all kind of self-serving when we're younger, and hopefully we outgrow it.
Yeah, I talk about him in one of my chapters on the Heroic Inspirations book, and I was looking for a good story to draw some inspiration from for Spider-Man. I was going those early Stan Lee stories. I'm thinking, man, I can just like flip the pages through and drop my finger in somewhere because these stories are just loaded with inspiration. And I ended up going with one of them where he was trying to make some money. It didn't work or whatever, but he was almost like, fine, I'll just be a villain if that's what they want. It was one of the very beginning intro issues, but he was out there covering J. Jonah Jameson's son was doing the space, it was an astronaut thing, new space thing or whatever, but he ended up falling, the shuttle malfunctioned. He was falling to his death. So Spider-Man himself, he just knew he had to do, something to save this guy. So he ends up getting a shuttle. Somebody else, he lets the fact that he's Spider-Man inspired somebody else to take him up in a shuttle, and he's like jumping through the air. And there's no buildings to fling his web to. So I call the chapter something to cling to, right? Because sometimes you need that. So even if he didn't have anything physically to cling to, he had the fact that he needed to do this because it was the right thing to do. He was the only one there. It's not enough time to go get the Fantastic Four or Iron Man to come do it. It was pretty cool. It was a good story, but yeah, that kind of character is he's so rich and so inspiring when people dig into him. So moving from that, then, since don't have anything else to say, if you do think of something else you want to say about him, feel free to come back to it. But maybe we'll save Indy for the end, unless you want to drop into him now, because I was really intrigued with your choice of Elliot Ness. I'd never seen that 90s series. I knew about it. I knew it existed, but I'd never watched it. But I did love the Kevin Costner film, with Sean Connery and whatnot. That was just, man, it was an amazing film. But what was it? Did that inspire the series, or I forget what the order they came in?
It came out a couple years later. First off, it had a wonderful main theme by Joel Goldsmith, which is Jerry Goldsmith's son, who died of cancer before his father. But that show came out I think senior year in high school or right after senior year in high school.
Okay.
But I love the theme. I love the costuming. I love the stories. I always had an interest in law, and you always watch cop shows because it was cop shows or like Dallas when you were growing up, and you don't want to watch Dallas, right? Right? Okay.
No, I'm not a Dallas guy. Don't worry. Yeah.
Okay. I tape it every week, and I rewatch it throughout the week, and I really just loved the characters on the show. You had Elliot Ness, who the pilot, it starts out, Elliot Ness is starting college, and Al Capone is like dropping out of high school, and it shows
it starts that early.
Yeah, okay. It starts out early, and it shows Al Capone getting in all his trouble and starting his gang and killing people, and it shows Elliot Ness going to college, meeting the girl that he's going to marry, and he had a wonderful connection with the actress that played his wife on the show, and they eventually got married after the show.
Oh, wow.
But I just really fell in love with the character of Elliot Ness, because it's like, that's what I want to do. I want to go to college, meet the woman I'm going to marry, become either an FBI agent or a CIA agent, and then a U.S. attorney, and have like 12 kids, and go to church every Sunday. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. And very little of it worked out.
Yeah.
But and then like the dichotomy between him and Al Capone, because it was just like night and day. But I thought they did a really good job. And, I know it's all like, because I've read the real histories about what Elliot Ness did, and it's nowhere near what he did in the TV show.
Sure.
And I know it was a tax case that brought him down and not prohibition charges. But having someone who at that time, I mean, Chicago was completely corrupt, and he stood up and he said, no, you can't buy me off. And in real life, they did try to buy him off. They offered him like 2 years worth of salary just to like, hey, just like go over there. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. Which was unheard of at the time in Chicago. Yeah. But just believe in someone who did the right thing. And I really liked the relationship he had with his wife. I thought that was priceless for the show. Okay. And they totally just crapped all over it in the second season.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How many seasons did it run?
2.
2. Okay. Just
two seasons, about 50 episodes. Back when, you had like 24 episodes per season. Mm-hmm. But I think the ratings, they were just trying to boost ratings and attract a younger crowd. And his wife ran off and left him, and he got a divorce, and he hooked up with a prostitute. And I'm just like, what's going on?
That's weird. And,
yeah. It's like, when you talk about how like, this is how this character is supposed to be. And if you deviate from that, you lose the character. And it ceases to become that character, like Ben Affleck in Batman versus Superman. I'm like, yeah, I understand what you're talking about, because I have to see it through the lenses of The Untouchables, Elliot Ness second season. I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's not really him anymore. This is not the same show.
And it's interesting that you mentioned, because I think you're absolutely right. It's one thing if you're going to study the history of somebody, if you're going to write a historical book or do a historical documentary on Elliot Ness, okay, do that. If you're telling a story, if you're writing a movie or doing a TV series, then you just got to forget that history crap and embrace the myth, because the myth is just as important. The myth is what people draw inspiration from. And elements of that are going to come from the history, and that's fine. It's good to know the difference between the two. But I don't know much about Elliot Ness's the history of him, so I don't know if he ever actually had marital trouble or whatever, or if that's even known. But yeah, if you started that up in the first season, I understand from a writer's standpoint the desire, okay, we got to shake things up. We want to introduce some drama, keep people interested with the tension and whatnot. Sure, but you don't start chipping away at the foundational appeal of the show. And if that was really a foundational appeal for him, one of the things was his marriage was part of his uprightness, then you don't mess with that. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and that was invested from the pilot episode. She was there. They met in college. They got married, had kids. He loved his wife. It was very apparent. And then now they're getting a divorce, and he's shacking up with a prostitute. It'd be like, next month in Captain America, he becomes an alcoholic and a drug addict. I'm like, what? Okay.
Snyder's listening.
I just gave Marvel a great idea. Yeah. But no, you are right. The myth, you want to know, history's good and history has its place. But I think in the collective conscious, people need to have myths.
Exactly.
Because they're easier to understand. And we all need myths, and we're going to create them either culturally or not. We're going to find a myth somewhere. Just like a society will find religion. If you get rid of God, society will create a new religion, and it ain't going to be pretty. Yeah. Period. It never has been.
So Torque Game says, I don't know, having Ta-Nehisi Coates as a writer could make anyone drink. That's true. But you're talking about, I like, this is kind of, this links Elliot Ness to Spider-Man, but that era there in Prohibition, the 20s, even into the early 30s and whatnot, gangster movies, that was the genre, gangster films.
Yeah.
And on one aspect, you've got things like Public Enemy #1, which were shows that are movies rather that were embracing the crime and kind of a little bit of glory. It was like the exotic other nature of the crime world. People found that interesting. But on the other hand, you did have films and radio dramas. I listened to them on the Sirius Radio Classics that go into that era and show in such a corrupt era, like you're saying, let's have a hero that stands up and says, no, I won't make the easy choice of accepting the corruption, accepting the safe, monetary, wealthy way of out there. And it's the same thing, whether we're talking about Prohibition or the Wild West, or any of those times, whenever you have a time like that it's a lot of times we think if we're in tricky times, it's a Gotham City kind of thing, and you need a vigilante who's going to do it hardcore. Well, no, you also need your stand-up, straight, square-jawed, upright, like Elliot Ness, our Superman type character or whatever, to say, no, I'm not going to be a part of the corruption. I'm going to be here. I'm going to fight within the law, even within the corruption of the law, and I'm going to do the right thing, period. There's an enormous appeal to that if it's done well. So you've kind of piqued my curiosity. Would you say the series is done very much in the same spirit as the film?
The film was Brian De Palma, and it was very violent. You can only get away with so much violence,
Sure. I just mean the spirit of like the heroism and stuff. And
I think so. Only it invested more time into the setup of the characters, a lot more character development. It invested a lot more into the characters of Elliot Ness and then Al Capone. I think they had equal screen time, to be honest.
Okay.
And everything you saw in Elliot Ness, it's like Al Capone was the exact opposite. Yeah. He got married, but he's got all these women over here, So, but Elliot Ness goes home at night to his wife and his kids. Al Capone's doing whatever he wants to do with whomever.
Yeah. I see Crizzy Kitty said that the real Elliot Ness got divorced twice in real life. But the thing is, like Daniel said, if you're going to change, and that's good to know, but at the same time, if you're going to change the way they busted him to prohibition charge versus tax charge, well, that's a pretty blatant split from history. Then you might as well just split with the marriage thing as well and let him stay happily married, be close, be true to the archetype.
He also drank in real life. He had a DUI accident before they had DUI accidents, before they were called that. He was like chief of police for somewhere in Ohio, I think, and I think he got ran out of town. His final years weren't very good. Now that we know all that, I mean, okay, yeah, he was a person, but back to the myth. Myth is important for a culture. And if you tell someone on the street, like, hey, Elliot Ness, who is he? Oh, he brought down Al Capone. He was the untouchable. Boom, you've conveyed something.
Exactly.
Very effectively, very easily.
Yeah.
And I'm not just discounting the actual historical man at all, but you have to have something to believe in.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Not on a religious level, and then as a society and cultural level, we have to have things to believe in. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. And it's easier when you're doing something, fiction wise, like I keep equating, because I don't think I'm trying to, I can't think of any other stand upright heroes we have from that gangster era. I love the Elliot Ness, but in terms of somebody working within the law, there are radio dramas, like I said, that told stories from the FBI or something like that, but I'm trying to think. I mean, a lot of the stories are heroes who are working outside the law, like vigilante, like a Green Hornet type or whatever. But in the analog to the gangster era, which is the Wild West, you did have characters like the Lone Ranger,
Marshall
himself
Dillon?
being Marshall Dillon. That's right. Gunsmoke. Yeah, exactly. Hopalong Cassidy. Yeah. The 6-shooter, Jimmy Stewart. I love that one too. So I need to go back and research and find some of the ones from the gangster era, because that's kind of an untapped era. I see that Chris says the longest running superhero RPG on Earth channel. He's got a long running RPG game. And he says one of their heroes actually joined the Untouchables at one point in the Golden Age, and that is kind of a cool, the myth of the Untouchables, where you've got that that's somebody you want to associate your heroes with if you were writing fiction and everything. It's a pretty cool idea. Now, I don't really know how to transition from that to to Indiana Jones.
Well, I just want to let me bring something else in real fast, because I mentioned Daniel in the Lion's Den, and you said Elliot Ness stood up, but yeah, Daniel in the Lion's Den. One I was named after him, but I always thought that was a great story, because it's just a great story. I mean,
is he your patron saint?
St. George.
St. George. Okay, gotcha.
But
Dragon Slayer, Lion Tamer, whatever.
It's all the same.
Exactly.
But no, he believed in something, and he was told you have to offer worship to King of Babylon, I think it was.
Nebuchadnezzar, yeah.
And he's like, no, I can't do that. And he's like, well, we'll feed you to the lions. And he's like, okay. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Because how many of us just go along to get along?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we all have a point where we're just going to say, like, no, I'm not going to do that. But I mean, God bless him. They threw him in a den full of lions. He came out the next day. I would hope in a time like that, I would have the strength of his convictions.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it meant I didn't walk out the next day. Because a lot of times we all just take the path. Well, this is just a little bit easier, and it gets me by till tomorrow, and I can just do something else. Sometimes you just got to be like, no, homie ain't playing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the archetype of the martyr, whether you're dealing with somebody like Daniel in the Lion's Den to be, eaten by lions, or was it Wallace from Braveheart, right? Being
which is another great film, although it's historically horribly inaccurate.
But it's got the myth, man. It's got the myth.
It's got the myth.
Yeah, exactly. That, and there's so many others. But the cool thing about the story of Daniel in the Lion's Den, though, is that he doesn't. He's not gruesomely killed. You've got the angels. It's kind of like this divine, where you've got this sort of this subversion of expectations in a good way, where Daniel's weak. He's a conquered one of the Israelites there. He's he was Kingdom of Judah, a conquered Jew, by Babylon, cast in, so he's helpless. He's just a slave, helpless down there. And then all of a sudden, the most badass soldiers in the world, these angels come and close the mouths of the lion, and same thing with Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, his friends, in the fiery furnace and whatnot. The divine backup, the cavalry comes, that's it's a cool subversion there, and it shows, the doing the right thing is the right thing. So it's the same thing as Luke Skywalker submitting to Darth Vader, in Empire Strike or Return of the Jedi, because he knows he's got the right on his side. He knows he's going to, his father's going to turn in the end and stuff like that. So yeah, it's enormously inspirational.
Since you brought that up, I'm going to run something by you.
Sure.
I don't know who I was watching, but someone I was watching on YouTube the other day, and they were saying that they thought Luke went to Vader to try to, save him, but he felt that Luke thought in his heart this was like a one-way trip, and he wasn't going to survive. He was going to buy some time for the rebels, and he would just end up dying with Vader and the Emperor at the end of the day.
That is revisionist history.
Yeah, I kind of felt like, he felt he had a chance.
Yeah.
But even if it didn't work out, he was ready to die.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and he might have known that, even if he died, his focus in that point was helping to redeem his father. That was what he wanted to do. Obviously, help the rebellion and all of that as well. But I hate it when people do that. And I don't know who that was either that you were listening to, but they look at a wonderful aspirational story like that, and they just can't relate to it. So they try to infuse, and eisegete some sort of, desperation and nihilistic intention, into the characters. Like, no, that's not how it works. Yeah, I agree. So a very different hero, though, for Indiana Jones. Still a hero, but somebody who's not doing what he's doing to save people. At least that's not why he eventually goes on these journeys, right? He goes on them for knowledge, for history, for wisdom, stuff like that. And of course he ends up saving people at different times and whatnot. But what was how does he fall into this mix? When did you first introduce yourself to the Indiana Jones character?
1981.
Nice.
I was however old I was in 1981.
I would have been about 3 or 2.
I'm a little older than you. Not much. I don't know. I thought of going on an adventure. I always wanted to travel all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I always loved history because of Indiana Jones, or it just worked out that way.
Yeah.
But wanted to be an archaeologist forever. I don't know. There's just something about Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's loaded with seminal appeal. I mean, he's
very smart, and
mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to be smart. He's good at dealing with different situations.
Mm-hmm.
He gets hurt a lot, which makes him more relatable. Like Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man gets hurt a lot.
Sure.
Someone like Superman, and I'm not knocking Superman fan, man, but someone like Superman who is pretty much indestructible.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay,
Well, there are ways to do it, but writers don't always have the chops or the imagination for it. Yeah.
Yeah, but Indiana Jones falls down and gets hurt. He gets shot. And he bleeds. His clothes are always dirty, and I could go out in the yard and I could swing across the ditch and
mm-hmm.
crawl through the field and dig in the dirt.
Yeah.
Jump in the creek. Have my little adventures. And I can learn history and look at books with pictures of Egypt and faraway places, and it's just, what little boy wouldn't love Indiana Jones?
Yeah. Well, you're hitting on all the main things that the appeal there. I mean, he's an adventure hero, right? Archetypically, there he's a frontiersman, adventure hero. But he also, Lucas and Spielberg, as you know, really were trying to draw inspiration from the pulps. And he really does fall from that Doc Savage line of characters, stories or whatever. And Doc Savage, are some of those heroes would have sort of augmented strength sometimes. But yeah, you're right. He doesn't. What is his skill? His skill is his brain. Obviously, so like you said, he's very smart. He's a professor. I think that's awesome. But
just like you.
Exactly. He's got the brains and the smarts when it comes to the artifacts and the history of the ancient places that he's going and everything like that. But when he's in a fix, he's also very clever. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people talk about. He's got all the book sense, but he's also like, how do I use my whip to get out of this den of snakes? He's very clever. And when the rubber meets the road there, street smarts, as it were, for that time. And also such another time period, fighting against world powers and the Nazis and stuff like that around World War II, or the build up of World War II, or even the aftermath and whatnot. So it's a great time period. You've got high adventure. And yeah, it's not going to be an Indiana Jones film if he's not hanging off of something, if there's not peril, if he's not trapped somewhere. Yeah. We want to see characters like that get out, because it tells us on a visceral level that we too can escape the traps of our lives. We're not going to, hopefully we'll never be stuck in a snake's den, but we are trapped in many places in our lives, and it teaches us how to escape those and whatnot. So yeah, I get that. And is there one of the films you like more than the others, or is that blasphemy to ask?
So one,
obviously there are only 3 films, by the way.
There are only 3. The one that I'm currently watching is my favorite. That's my answer. Like, what's your favorite Indiana Jones film? The one I'm currently watching.
Whichever you're currently watching. Gotcha.
I will ask you this: did you watch the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles when it came on ABC?
No, and Age of Boomer has really recommended that to me, and I think they're on Amazon Prime. They're on my list to get to one day. Are they good? Okay. Do you think they're good?
Yes. There's 2 storylines. There's him as a boy, which is kind of like, okay. But as a teenager, his dad wants him to be an English lit professor.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to do that. He wants to go into archaeology. He runs away from home. He goes to Mexico during the Mexican Revolution. He meets Pancho Villa. He meets Patton when Patton was a younger officer. He meets a guy named Remy from Belgium, and they're in a motion picture show, and they're showing the newsreel of World War I, and Remy says, like, I'm fighting the wrong war. I need to go home. And Indiana's like, I'll go with you. And they go to Belgium, they enlist. Indiana lies about his age and his name, but because he speaks 20-something languages, they let him in. He's a spy, he's a courier, he's an infantryman in World War I. sees all sorts of action, ends up at the Treaty of Versailles at the end of the war, doing translations, has all kinds of adventures. And then the show got canceled. Thank you, ABC. But I really enjoyed the parts of him as a teenager. And and at that point in time, the ethnic cleansing in Sarajevo was going on.
Oh, okay.
And that just disturbed me on so many different levels in high school, because I think most high school people probably want to commit to something greater than themselves.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people today in the SJW class do it the wrong way. I think they're doing it for them.
Yeah.
And I had a teacher, and he said, well, why don't you join the UN and become a peacekeeper in Sarajevo? And I'm like, that's awesome.
How'd that work out?
I'd be just like Indiana Jones. And he's like, you would. And I'll be like, that's great. And that's what I was going to do. That's not how it works. You have to join the United States military, and then you have to get assigned to a peacekeeping unit and all this other stuff. And I was like, it's so boring. Why can't I just go to Sarajevo and just like sign up? And you're 18 and you think like, yeah, give me like an AK and a flak vest and some boots, and I'll fight the people committing genocide. And it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good thing, because I probably would have gotten killed.
but it gave you those dreams. It gave you those aspirations. I like that. And
yes,
I always appreciate heroes like that come from an area of book sense, which isn't science. Like enough with the science heroes. I get it. Everybody's got to be a super scientist to be a hero. Like, no, that's not my brain. So I appreciate it when I can find somebody like Indy or other heroes who come from a history, or archaeological, or English or whatever background. Some people in the chat are saying that the AL is talking about watching the Young Indiana Jones. Somebody said something. Centaurify said the Teenager Chronicles. Was there some that were teenager and one that was young, or what's that?
It was the same show, but some weeks he'd be like 8 years old, some weeks he'd be a teenager.
Oh, okay. So just bounce back and forth. So it didn't go in order. It just
no, not at all.
Oh, okay.
Not at all. No.
Were some of the arcs multi-episodes? So like you would stick with one story over a few episodes, then you jump?
The pilot episode, he was like 8 years old in Egypt, and he met T.E. Lawrence, and some guy stole an artifact, and T.E. Lawrence ran off to catch the guy, but he didn't. And then it jumped ahead to him as a teenager in Mexico, and he came across that same guy. And I think he got the artifact back. I may be mistaken.
Okay.
And there's a lot of two-parters. A lot of two-parters, especially in World War II. There's a two-parter with Charles de Gaulle in it that was very good.
Oh, wow.
The Verdun episode was very good. It was a one-parter. But I don't know if you know much about trench warfare, but it was very pointless. And the French kept trying to take more ground. And the generals just kept ordering, like, make another attack. And the French and the Belgians just kept getting mowed down. And it ended where he was a messenger. They gave him the message and said, deliver this message. And he's like, well, this attack isn't going to work. And he's like, doesn't matter. Attack.
Yeah.
and Indiana gets on the motorcycle and drives off, and he stops, and he's like, no, I'm not doing this today. And he takes the message and sticks it in the gas tank and sets it on fire and pushes his bike in the ditch, and it blows up.
Oh, wow.
And he goes back and says, like, man, I got attacked and my bike blew up. And he gave everyone another day to live. And you can say, well, that's kind of pointless. They died tomorrow. Yeah, but they had another day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he, in World War I, he would have gotten shot for doing that.
Oh, sure.
No questions asked.
Yeah. What was there also a series of books? I mean, I know that Indiana Jones was kind of like Star Wars in the effect that they did everything, but somebody was recommending to me one time a series of books, I thought, and I think it might have been Young Indiana Jones.
Yeah, well, Rob McGregor wrote some books back in the 90s. Like 4 or 5 books, and I actually read those back in the day. And I think there's a couple Young Indiana Jones books, but I don't remember them being anything overly great. I think they were just novelizations of the TV show.
Okay. Gotcha.
But the Rob McGregor books, yeah, I would read those.
Okay, yeah. I have to put those on my list because they sound interesting. Well, you I can't remember because I've been talking a little bit. Matt Wilkins is going to be on the show next week. He's going to be either Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll figure it out and hammer it out. But he's going to be on the Inspiration Heroes next week. So I've been talking about him, about his heroes. So I'm mixing them up a little bit in my mind. But you gave me a slew of them. So what other heroes did you want to talk about, or we're on the list that we haven't covered yet?
Winston Churchill. I know he's not fictional. And I know there's not probably any great fictional depictions of Winston Churchill. Did
you encounter him though in a certain movie or is it just the historical figure from the documentaries?
Historical figure. He was in an episode of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles though.
Okay, makes sense.
He was at a dinner party. They were talking about the suffragette movement in London.
Mm-hmm.
But no, Winston Churchill just had a fascinating life.
Sure.
He dealt with severe depression, which I think most people probably don't realize.
Mm-hmm.
But he was still functional. But he had a lot of dark times. He wrote about dark times. Like he would say, like I've just been consumed by the empty darkness, and it has swallowed my soul, and I just wish for death.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I know what you're saying, pal. And he was still able to do what he did. He stood up to Nazi Germany. And he said, no, we are not going to back down. We are not going to surrender. We will not sign this armistice. Everyone in the cabinet and everyone in the government was like, Winston, we have to do this. And he's like, no, we will not do this. We will fight until we're all lying dead, choking in our own blood.
Yeah.
And if someone could just do that today with some other things and just say, no, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, and he had a lot of financial problems too. Like he bought a real nice house, Chartwell, and it was defaulted upon, but someone gave him the money so he could keep it. And he wrote, the man wrote, and I wish I was disciplined enough to write like he did.
Mm-hmm.
And he read books, and I wish I was disciplined enough to read like Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, but I just really admire. I've got a picture of Churchill as a young army officer in my bedroom.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I get that a lot. I'm really into early American history, so like anything from colonial to like through the Revolutionary War and early years of that. And it's you do some of the people who did some of the most amazing things in their life had the darkest demons, whether it was depression or just insecurities and self-doubt and everything
Abraham
like that.
Lincoln was was manic depressive. The day he got married, they had to go looking for him. He was wandering the woods, threatening to slit his wrist on this one day.
I didn't know about that. I heard some parts of that though, but yeah. So kind of going full circle as we start to wrap up a little bit, I do see general themes in the heroes you've chosen. You really do like, which I think is great, heroes who show you to stand up, do the right thing no matter what, even if the world around you telling you to buckle, take the bribe, take the armistice, whatever, do the right thing no matter what. But then also, as is natural for anybody, we like to see heroes who show us how to navigate those times where we feel doubt or we feel whether it's depression, whatever personal demon you're dealing with, anxiety or whatever. Now you had said that music was always your go-to thing. I talked about on my channel, when I started, I've kind of branched out a little bit into talking about bands and whatnot, through the Hard Rock comics, but how we mythologize, things like that. And for me, in high school, it was hard rock for me. So like the bands, Van Halen, Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin, Whitesnake, all those great bands were like, they were my go-to, and I mythologized them. I read the comics and different things or whatever. And it was almost like, these people, which you don't. I read biographies years later and thought, man, that's what was going on during that CD or that album. Oh, I'm just not going to think about that when I listen to it. But you are coming from a totally different venue from me because I think it's great. And I've learned to appreciate soundtracks as I grew older, certainly. But, you were talking about teenage years and stuff like that. If I'd have met somebody who just listened to soundtracks, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool, I guess, But what is the appeal of that? You said a little bit like you can see the movie in your head, but how did you get into soundtracks?
Star Wars, Superman.
Sure.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. E.T. Conan the Barbarian. That's the first non-John Williams one. James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
I would be out in the field at my grandparents doing like crazy stuff, dressed up as Indiana Jones, and I had that soundtrack playing in my head with no walkman all the time. All the time. I would tie a blanket around my neck like a cape and I'd fly around the backyard, and I had Superman going in my head. For me, it's always been, it's always been there. Which is
so how did you? What was the first soundtrack you bought?
Raiders of the Lost Ark on cassette. I still have it.
Okay.
It's,
cool.
It's over there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
But no one in my family cares about music, to be honest.
That's a pain.
And singing was like always discouraged. You know, you go to church and you just kind of sing real quiet. Don't make, don't be too loud. But no, I failed recorder class, big time.
I remember those beastly things, the recorders. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I started watching John Williams and the Boston Pops with my grandmother in like 88, 87. He'd come on in the summer on PBS on Sunday nights, and we would watch it. But growing up in the county, we had 3 TV stations.
Yeah, I was like that too.
Programming sucked. So I had my boombox and I had all my soundtracks. And my grandmother, God bless her, whatever I wanted to listen to, she would listen to it with me. We'd wash dishes, fold clothes, whatever. There's always music in the boombox. Nice. And I mean, because there's no TV.
I don't think my grandmother would have listened to Dokken or Cinderella with me. It's probably a little bit easier if it's soundtracks you're trying to get.
Yeah, it was. But I would make mixtapes from CDs. But no, it was the London Symphony Orchestra and the Boston Pops. Yeah. And to be honest, like Symphony Hall in Boston, that's more magical than Disneyland. Period.
Oh yeah.
Don't you dare argue with me.
I've never been. I'd love to go. I'd love to see a show.
I've invited you a couple of times.
You did, and you always invite me at times. I know, but I'm going to go with one of these days. I also want to get down to where you are as well, because there are a number of things that I want to see down in Alabama too. So yeah, one of these days we'll meet up soon. You're on the list.
But no, like even today, like I said, like the Empire of the Sun toy planes home and hearth, just it'll pop in my head if it's just been a really crappy day.
Yeah.
Or if something bad's happened. And like Jana and I had like a whole playlist of songs. I can make like mini CDs of like our songs or songs that had meanings for us. And I think if you can communicate with someone through music, man, it's a done deal.
Yeah.
I don't know what you and Sound Engraver got, but I'm sure she likes music.
Well, we started out like, oh, that could be our song, and then like no more like, oh, that one too. Oh, that one too. And I think the He-Man soundtrack is on the list of our songs, definitely. But
do you have the He-Man soundtrack?
I'm sure I could download it somewhere. I've got the DVDs.
It's not the same. It's not the same. Downloading's not the same.
Oh, you have to have the CD. That's right. Yeah, I did pull out my CDs recently. I'm building my collection again, digging them all out of storage and everything. So. Yeah, it is different. It's just something to hold it in your hand and listen to it.
It is. Sweet. Yeah. It is. Yeah, and I got you Shadows of the Empire. It'll be coming when it comes. So
you're the man. That's awesome. Well, as we start to wrap up here, because I do need to switch gears from my book study over on Catholic Bible Geek, we're going to start the last book of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Last Battle, tonight. But any kind of closing thoughts or things you haven't said yet, or either other people you want to mention or anything, just as we wrap up? It's okay if you don't have anything, but.
Adopt, don't shop.
That's your closing. That's right.
That's my closing. I got something to show you off camera, so don't run off.
Okay. Now tomorrow, as of right now, it's tomorrow night. But when I do release this video, or when people watch it as a recorded video, it might be tonight. So Wednesday night. That's every night. Wednesday night, Soundtracks with Birdman on Daniel's channel. And what is? I think you got something pretty cool coming up tomorrow, right?
The Shadow, Jerry Goldsmith score. Yep.
Awesome. And I'm going to let me see. Oh, there it is. I'm going to put the link to your channel in the discussion thread so people can go sub. It's a lot of fun. Definitely subscribe and check out those streams.
I'm at 39 subscribers. If I could hit 40 by next month, I'll be very excited.
And somebody here can give you 40.
Somebody, sure. Come on.
But
awesome. No, honestly, I'm always thrilled. Anyone shows up. Melissa Harris, God bless you. You always show up. Thank you so much.
I know. Melissa Harris is like the cheerleader of the community. She's on every stream. She's awesome.
Yeah. But I enjoy just having the conversation with H Boomer, and that's like the best friend that I lost in elementary school that I never knew I had.
He's great. He's awesome. Yeah,
he is. If you're listening to H Boomer, I got you a pretty cool birthday present coming. No, it's not that Mario game, but it's almost as cool.
Cool. So yeah, check that out. Check out other content there from Birdman, and come back to. So obviously on this channel, Thursday night we'll be finishing up Red Harvest, our the zombie Star Wars novel, and then we'll talk about what's coming next in our Star Wars EU book studies, because we do have more content to come. And yeah, there's something else. Oh yeah, so next week I will have Matt Wilkins. That's the plan anyway. On one of these streams, I'm going to try to do them about once a week. These Inspiration of Heroes, and just because you've done a stream now, Daniel, doesn't mean that I won't come back and revisit old guests. So you'll be back again at some point in the future. So don't forget about me.
I'm not going nowhere.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for being my guest. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone who came by to listen. I missed the chat, but I'll try to go back through it. Thank you all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thanks for everybody who popped in. Great to see everybody. I did see a couple questions. Just because of the nature of time, I can't answer everything. Some people were asking about thoughts on heroic colors, palettes, and whatnot. You can check some of my old streams about the stop screwing with the costume and iconic costume designs and whatnot. I do cover color there a little bit, but anything else, I'll come back and try to answer those questions. But until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love.